Good evening. Good evening. And welcome and thank you all for coming this evening. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Riette Kenkel and I'm the Executive Director for the Valemount Learning Centre. I've written out my introduction because I am a little bit of a microphone hog and I will stand here all night chatting about nothing if I don't read. So I'm going to read this to you. As most of you probably know, the Valemount Learning Centre provides educational, employment, and settlement services for Valemount. As part of our mandate, we try to work with community organizations and groups in matters of community and regional concern, and that is sort of, in a loose way, how this all fits in. Our mission statement is quite simple: developing individuals, building community. I would like to take a moment to introduce some of our board of directors who are here this evening, as well as a few of our staff members that are here this evening. So if I could just ask you when I say your name to just stand up so that everyone can recognize you. Our board members are all wearing their coveted Valemount Learning Centre vests, so you'll recognize them in that. Jennifer Applebaum is our president. Bill Christelbrink is our vice president. Wendy Dyson, our treasurer. Judy Holman was not able to make it this evening. Corey Marshall is one of our directors. Silvio Gislimberti, also one of our directors. And Brian Hansen. Thank you, Brian. And Laura Johnson, I don't think is here. Oh, she wasn't able to make it. Okay. And for our staff, we have Mike Johnson and Carol Bullock, and we have Jared Smith right here in the front. Now Jared is the program coordinator for our ESL Settlement Assistance Services. And a couple of months ago, Jared came to me with a question. His question was, Riette, do you think the Valemount Learning Centre would be interested in helping sponsor a refugee family? So I told him I'd have to discuss it with the board of directors, and after quite a bit of discussion and a presentation from Jared, we came to basically where we are tonight. The Valemount Learning Centre is exploring the idea of assisting with a refugee sponsorship application, and we're willing to coordinate the process to hopefully help a family come to Valemount. But before we can proceed, we would like community feedback and suggestions. We're not in a position to fund this, and therefore we do need community support to do it. Jared has put together a great presentation for you. He's going to give us all some background information. He's going to explain the process, what's needed from the community, and how you can help. And then we're going to have a question and answer period afterwards. There's coffee, tea, and goodies set up as well, so please help yourself to that anytime throughout the evening. And please join me in welcoming Jared Smith.
Thank you, Riette. First, I would like to thank the board for supporting this idea, and Riette also. Both the board and Riette have been supportive right from the beginning, so it's really great. Thanks, Gord, also for filming this so people who can't make it tonight can watch it on TV this week, and if it's really exciting, we can watch reruns all week too. So, yeah, we're here to talk about refugee sponsorship. We're going to start off with a little bit of an overview of the crisis. Probably most people here have been following this for a while now, so this isn't going to be new. We're going to talk about the process of sponsoring refugees, the social and financial requirements to sponsor, and what the next steps will be if we decide we can proceed with this. So we should be out of here within 3 or 4 hours. I don't think it should be too long. Yeah, no, probably an hour. It's a quick presentation, and I think everyone will be on the same page here. Okay, overview of the crisis. It started in 2011 with Arab Spring. A lot of people in Northern Africa and the Middle East started to protest authoritarian regimes that they wanted a more democratic system. So what started as peaceful protests, the government responded to those with violence, and civil war started. So now in Syria, there's multiple groups fighting for control. It's a little bit of a mess. There's the government forces of the Assad regime. They're backed by Russia. There's Iranian and Lebanese forces participating. There's rebel groups like ISIS or ISIL. And then there's the alliance of the Western nations. So before this conflict, Syria had 22 million people. And now between the 5 million that have already left and the roughly 7.5 million that have been internally displaced, so over half the population has been displaced in some way. As you can see, the bombing campaign hasn't really been that targeted. It's hitting a lot of neighborhoods. So on the ground, this has really disrupted everyday life. So 5 to 6 million people have left Syria and are in neighboring countries and camps, which is great. They've escaped the conflict, but the situations they find themselves in it's very temporary. It's not lasting solutions. They're not able to integrate into those societies simply because of the numbers in those countries. Those countries can't absorb that many new people. So that's where other countries come in internationally to help with it. So, as you know, Canada has committed to accepting 25,000 government-assisted refugees, and they're encouraging many other individuals and community groups to help with privately sponsored refugees. So 25,000 seems like a lot, but typically Canada does bring in about 25,000 refugees per year. Over the last few years, it's been between 25 and 30,000. So with the government's pledge to support 25,000 specifically government-sponsored refugees, the total number this year in Canada will likely be, by the end of 2016, will likely be closer to 50,000. So it's really not, it's a large number, but it's only twice of what we normally do. And in the early 90s and at other times, Canada has brought in between 40 and 50,000 refugees a year. So, and then there's also the immigration. That's not counting immigration. That's just refugees. So the Syrian refugees that are destined to Canada have been, screened to find the most vulnerable cases. So you might have been hearing about the different categories, the government-assisted refugees. They're supported by the government in some ways. They're given a loan to cover their airfare and their medical costs of their screening before they come. And then the government does give them living supports for their first year, which they do not need to be paid back. The airfare loan and the medical screening costs, those do need to be paid back. That's in the form of a loan. The privately sponsored refugees are completely supported by either sponsorship agreement holders, which are usually faith-based organizations or large churches. And those organizations, the sponsorship agreement holders, they bring in refugees every year. This is part of their mandate. These agreement holders have usually done this for a number of years already. Groups of 5 can be just 5 individuals that get together, pool their resources, and decide to bring in a refugee or sponsor a refugee. And then the community sponsor is any other community group or even a business that wants to sponsor a refugee. So at this point, the Learning Center is looking at the possibility of becoming a community sponsor, but there is still the possibility of us working with an existing sponsorship agreement holder too, which might lessen the paperwork involved. So if you have any questions, just please stop, raise your hand, and we can answer them along the way. We can also answer them at the end. The last category are the refugees that have landed in Canada. So in this situation, there are not that many that have made it this far. But this category is asylum seekers that manage to make it to Canada, and then once they're here, they claim asylum. So the requirements to be a community sponsor are having the financial capacity, and we'll get in the next slides, we'll get to exactly what that means, how much that is, but you have to meet the financial capacity to fulfill the sponsorship, and also the emotional and social needs of the refugee. So as you can imagine, it's severe culture shock for refugees coming to Canada, different social system, language, culture. So they do need a lot of support that way to integrate successfully into the community. So it's not just about money, it's a lot of volunteer time also to try to welcome them here and help them feel like it's home. The other thing the community sponsor needs to do is to be where the refugees will settle. So this slide is probably kind of small for people at the back. It just lists some of the social responsibilities of the sponsorship. So when the community sponsor submits an application, they develop a settlement plan, and that describes how they're going to help the refugee settle in Valemount once they arrive or anywhere else in Canada. So things like meeting them at the airport, providing an orientation to life in Canada and Valemount, helping them find accommodation that's already furnished and ready, providing clothing, winter clothing, which they probably won't have, and other things that they're going to need in day-to-day life. And then there's the integration component, which is helping them with fill out health insurance forms, social insurance, child tax benefits, language classes, understanding the rights and responsibilities of permanent residents, and so on. So you can imagine that there's a lot of things that we just take for granted that to a person who just arrives would be quite difficult. Even something, grocery shopping, when you don't read English labels can be a nightmare. So that first year, they do need a lot of support. And then there's the financial component. So there are two parts to that the community sponsor is responsible for. So there's the initial startup costs, and that's furnishing their accommodation, providing them clothing, that kind of thing, the things that they're going to need right when they first land. And then there's ongoing monthly supports, because in most cases the refugees aren't going to be working in the first month or 2 months or 3 months. It really depends on their language skills and I guess other factors. They may have experienced a lot of emotional trauma. They might need counseling for a number of months. So those monthly supports, the community sponsor needs to be prepared to pay those supports for a full year, but they're responsible for a full year or until the family becomes self-sufficient. So if the people arriving do have some language skills and are ready to hit the ground running, so to speak, they might be working in the first few months, and that would lessen the financial responsibility on the community sponsor. So this is a sponsorship cost table provided by Immigration, Refugee, and Citizenship Canada. This is what they expect sponsors to show they have the capacity, the financial capacity to support the refugee for the first year. So these amounts can also be reduced through in-kind donations. So a minute ago we were looking at the startup costs of the furniture, accommodation, and clothing. Now, if those things can be donated, that number can be reduced a lot. And it is the same with the income support. You need to be able to provide for that full year, but there's a possibility that the family or individuals will be able to work sooner and not need that. Or there might be other in-kind donations which reduce that. For example, of the living supports, accommodation and food are two of the largest. So if some kind of accommodation is maybe donated, maybe subsidized accommodation, then again, that number will be reduced. But in the application, the community sponsor does need to show that they have the capacity to meet what is in this cost table. Maybe what I didn't make clear here is this is for a family of 4 or a group of 4. And that was one of the initial goals of the Valemount Learning Center, to sponsor a group of 4, but it really depends on the community support and fundraising efforts where we'll sit with that. So it might be the case that we can afford to sponsor a family size of 2 or maybe 5. I think this just reiterates that the community sponsor is responsible for both the social and the financial needs of living in Canada. The social being that you help them integrate into Canadian life, including school, work, community connections. And then the financial part is the initial startup, and then those ongoing supports until they're self-sufficient. So to proceed with the sponsorship, we need volunteer time to help with the social integration. We need the in-kind donations to help with the initial startup costs. And then we need financial donations to meet those ongoing monthly supports until the family is sufficient. Okay, so I guess I broke it down into each category here. So the volunteer time, these are some of the examples of volunteer roles that we'll need. So the idea was that we thought that many volunteers would come forward, and each of those volunteers would probably have some kind of strength that they could contribute. So one idea was that, say a volunteer came forward with a lot of knowledge about the medical system and healthcare. Maybe they could be a volunteer that was the family's go-to for things relating to that. Or if another person had children in school and knew about the schooling system, maybe they could volunteer to help the family enroll their children in school and guide them through that first year. So this is a way to kind of lessen, the responsibility of one volunteer and spread it out. And this also builds a lot of community connections for the refugees too. It's more people that they're meeting and talking to. One thing to mention, like Riet mentioned in the beginning, is that the Learning Center does provide settlement services. So these are the types of tasks that I usually help newcomers with, being the settlement coordinator. So, depending on, it'll be split probably between volunteer time, and then also they can come to the Learning Center to get help with a lot of these things too. Yeah, okay. The first one, this is something, the registered charity to start a bank account and accept financial donations. Of the volunteer roles, this is probably the one that we need the soonest. Yeah. The Learning Center is not a registered charity, so we can't issue tax-deductible receipts or gift receipts. So we're hoping that a community group or a church with registered charity status might be able to partner with us on this application and take some responsibility for creating a bank account and accepting financial donations. And then people can receive receipts when they donate. So if you know of any community groups that might be able to take that role, please let them know. And I've been in touch with some already, so that is something that we would like to get going in in the next week or two. One other thing for a community group is a coordinator for in-kind donations. So this is probably another good role for maybe a community group or church with some space. If they could accept donations and kind of keep track of what's already been donated and what is still needed, that kind of thing. I think most of the other roles are just, single people or groups of people, but those first two are quite important, and it would probably be best for a community group to take those roles on. Okay, yeah, the in-kind donations. So that's providing the startup necessities to the family when they arrive. So all of the household stuff for the kitchen, the bathroom, also furniture. So it would be a case of trying to fundraise what we could, what people had, and for the rest of it, there's a lot of things that we could buy used as well to reduce that initial cost. Used, but in still good shape. And then any donations for these startup necessities are going to reduce the amount, the overall financial burden. As I mentioned before, the financial donations, the initial goal was to sponsor a family of 4. That was the idea. And to do that, to proceed with the application, we would need to demonstrate that we had roughly $20,000 in living supports in the bank account before we can actually commit to sponsoring a refugee. So that number is about $1,666 per month, which is more or less equal to BC social assistance rates in the province, or welfare. So it's not a lot. We did some calculating and some budgeting, and it'd be surprisingly hard to live on that for a family of 4. So anything additional would be helpful, but okay. I think, as I mentioned before, the financial living supports continue until the family is independent, or 1 year, whichever is less. Well, the community sponsor is not responsible for more. If the family needs help after that point, they would be eligible for social assistance. So that would be how it would work if at that time they still needed financial help. Yeah, I guess the bottom point, it says other in-kind donations may reduce this amount too. So a big chunk of that was, for example, rental accommodation. If someone had a rental that they were willing to maybe partially subsidize, and that would bring down that cost. Yes. Okay. I need to repeat the question for Gord because he's recording this. So would it be fair to say that number seems really large, Peter, and that we're just wondering if we can actually... Mm-hmm. Okay, rather than at one time? Oh, yeah. Okay, that's a really good question. Yeah, because on the sign-up sheet, I did say under the financial part, I put a section for a one-time payment and then a monthly payment. Because I think for a lot of people, trying to donate a larger amount all at once is not an option, but maybe if it was spread over a month to month. Mm-hmm. I think, well, for approving that money, we would have to explore other ways to show, maybe showing other accounts, possibly, to show that money is available if it came to that. I'm not sure. We'd have to look into that a little bit further.
So you would still have to have, even if you've got a commitment, say for $2,000 a month coming in monthly, you still have to have the $20,000 up front?
Yes, you do. It is. I should repeat the question. So the question is, even though someone has committed to giving monthly amounts, do you still need to have that $20,000 in the bank, the full amount in the bank to begin with? And the answer is yes, you do have to have that amount in the bank. So in some way or another, we would have to prove that that money has been donated but isn't there yet. So that would be something we'd have to explore. I'd have to talk to the board about that, I think. Mm-hmm. Oh, I see. To almost take the financial liability on. Or
was guaranteed by another family member. So I'm thinking of the government acting as that other family member just in case.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I mean, the government is committed to bringing in 50,000 refugees regardless. I'm sure that there's some way that the math would work.
Mm-hmm. And maybe another community group could take that role too, who had that money in the bank already and said, maybe we'll bankroll this, so to speak, and take the liability, but also depend on those other contributions.
Yeah, it makes so much sense to me because even rents here don't even measure up. They're probably half of what would be required in Vancouver, for instance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and one other thing I should mention with the 20,000 is that is to privately sponsor a refugee. Now there is a program right now because the government is encouraging private sponsors to come forward. If you can enter what is called the Blended Visa Office Referred Program, then the government will cover 6 of the months of living supports. So at that time, that program right now is being a little bit overwhelmed. So we're not for sure if we can get into that program and get that government help. But if we can, then the 20,000 could be further reduced with the government's contributions. Yeah, we just can't bank on that at this point because that program kind of is being oversubscribed to right now. A lot of community groups are in the same position. So, but that isn't, and then that makes the sponsorship that much more affordable if the government is contributing months 2 through 7 to those living supports. So that's what we're going to pursue, but I hope that answers it, Peter. Yeah. Okay, the question is, where do the government-assisted refugees go? So the 25,000 government-assisted refugees, I think of which maybe 3,000 will come to British Columbia. And all of those are destined for the Lower Mainland. And they're destined for the Lower Mainland because there's an organization there, Immigrant Services Society of BC, and they have an agreement with the federal government to be a resettlement organization. So they deal specifically with incoming refugees, and they have for many years. So they're the only organization that holds that type of contract in BC. So it'll be the same in the centers. The refugees will go to the cities where the resettlement organization is located. And we've looked at that. We've tried to encourage that group to consider sending some government-assisted refugees into the smaller communities. But I don't know if that's going to happen. They do get funding to help those refugees. That's kind of part of their business model. So at this point, I think most of the government-assisted refugees will go to the Lower Mainland. Yeah, Rashmi.
Make the application, as well as when do you need to have the money in the bank, and when does the family get here? Okay,
so the question, if the camera didn't get all of it, was about the timeline, when we would like to proceed, when does the money need to be in the bank? Well, on the date on here, we have the sheet that I think probably most people have a copy of now. And the deadline is on there, we just kind of chose an arbitrary date of 3 weeks in the future, the end of this month, for people to think about, for individuals, businesses, community groups, hopefully all of them are involved, to think about how they can contribute, how they want to be involved. And hopefully by the end of the month, they've signed this kind of pledge sheet, and then we kind of know what we have. And then I guess we'll take stock at the end of the month. And if we have the numbers to proceed, then we will. Or we'll, I guess, change our goal. Maybe we can't sponsor a family 4, but maybe we can do something else. So.
And also, these sheets will be distributed throughout the community. They'll be available in various businesses, and we're going to try to get them online on our Facebook page, so that if someone hasn't made it to the meeting tonight, they still have an opportunity to pick up one of the forms, fill it out, and then we'll be able to take inventory and see what the community interest is. If there's enough interest, then we'll look at proceeding. If not, then we can't.
Yeah, and we brought 100 forms tonight, so feel free, if there are extras, to take them. And if you know of anyone else that might be interested, I mean, the meeting was great to get a bit more information, but it's really not needed, just having that form. And they're welcome to call the Learning Center with any questions too, if they want more information about it. This is also going to be airing on VCTV, so if someone who wasn't here maybe wanted to get a little bit more information, they could watch that too. Yeah, Peter.
Sorry. My voice generally carries, but I did a very quick calculation, and there are 35 people in this room tonight. Half of 35 times 50 a month. That works out to about $17,500 a year, and that would be if individuals here committed just $50 a month. So I'm thinking this is doable. We could do this as a community if the will was there, and maybe it wouldn't. Maybe we could do it for even less for the people that are able to donate on a monthly basis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree, Peter. I think the donation on the monthly basis really puts it into perspective. It makes it a lot more affordable, and $50 a month can work into a budget, whereas $500 or $600 in the first month isn't. So hopefully people can take advantage of that monthly idea. This was kind of an idea that we put on the sheet because we thought that it might be hard for people to contribute all at once, but we still have to work out the logistics, like your earlier question was asking. We still have to prove that we have that in the bank initially, so we'll have to explore how we can do that.
Yes, there may be even a guarantor in common for.
Exactly, yeah, wealthy benefactor, yeah. Yeah, Catherine?
How do you choose the person or family? Is there some criterion that you use? For example, maybe more rural people? Or do you have any criterion at all when in choosing a family?
Yeah, it's a good question. We were wondering the same thing. Apparently, when we submit our application, in our application we talk about our community and what we can provide and kind of what we're all about. And then at one point in the process, we look through refugee profiles that are already there, people that have been designated as refugees, and we pick one that we think is a good match. Now, it's still a little bit unclear how much say they have, whether they think they're a good match for us. So it sounds like the overseas offices that are dealing with this are a little chaotic right now, just with the numbers. But at least we can say what we can offer. Hopefully it gets to them also what they're getting into, because I agree, we don't want a bad match. I've seen people get off the bus in Valemount and just get right back on that we're going to stay here, so yeah. Or other people that have got off and never got back on too, right? So
You would be
No, I just wanted to say, I talked to somebody today from Prince George who helped with the refugees there. The first family came tonight, and he actually told me that the refugees there are asked where they would like to go. And I was worried about, well, because we are rural and a lot of people come from the cities, if they would even want to live on the countryside. And he's from Asia himself, and he said that a lot of Syrian refugees are actually farmers, and he thinks that there would be definitely people that would fit to Valemount. So that's just what I heard today.
That's great. Do you think you got much of that, Gord? Yeah, that's great. That's a cool comment. Yeah, that would be great. I hope there's that matching capability, because it doesn't seem like it would take that much extra work to really kind of match people up. But yeah, was there a question at the back there?
Okay.
Sorry, right at the very back.
Oh,
Oh, no.
I'll get back to you.
Oops.
So you'd asked about a community nonprofit organization with charitable status. Have you looked into that in terms of directed giving? Because I know from the charitable side, that is an area that is gray and black at times, where an organization can actually lose its charitable status by directed giving to a certain thing. So have you looked into this at all, or is that new to you?
Okay, so you're saying that a charity isn't always allowed to do that. They can't redirect the funds?
So
Okay.
I'm the pastor of the community church. So say you come and say, I want to give, Holly's right in front of me, so I'm going to pick on Holly. I want to give Holly $500, but I want a tax receipt for it, and so I'm going to run it through the church books. Illegal. I'm going to get fined. And I was just looking this up, and I can't find enough good information right away here. But I know, obviously, there are lots of other churches that are involved in this, so I was just curious if you had an idea on that, or...
I didn't know of that term, so that would mean that, yeah, we need to look into that further so that we don't accidentally commit fraud.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Okay, Rashmi just wants to respond, and then it's Shirley's turn.
So if the charitable organization, their mandate includes doing that kind of outreach, then it's not a problem. But I know, like, for example, the museum cannot take money to pass on to the library, because, so if whatever activity it's doing is part of the mandate, for example, the church is already doing outreach stuff, then banking the money is not a problem. So yeah, just from my experience.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rashmi.
Do you have to have the $20,000 in place before the application is sent?
That's what I've understood so far from the research we've done to submit the application. You do an initial application that just shows that you're considering it and this is what you can provide. But to go to the next stage, then you do need to prove those funds. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
One question back here. Pass that down.
It's actually just a comment. I just wanted to mention this because I haven't told anybody yet. I've been working with a group in Nova Scotia, and they just found out that they've been matched with 2 families. They were just hoping for one, but hoping that they could bring more. So they've been matched with 2 families that actually want to resettle together because they're related. So there's a good chance that they might have their new families coming within a week or maybe 2 months, but just wanted to let people know about that.
Wow. So that, I guess that shows that there is that matching capability too if they're keeping groups together. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, any other questions at this point? Oh yeah.
Do we know if any other communities in the area are doing something similar, like McBride or Dunster, anywhere like that?
I spoke with a guy from Jasper yesterday, Rod Keller. He's part of a group in Jasper, and they're partnering up with a sponsorship agreement holder. So they have a couple of individuals. So I guess Jasper is bringing in 2 separate groups. one group of 3 and one group of 5. So yeah, Jasper's pursuing that. I spoke with Rick Thompson of McBride, and they had a public meeting also, and he said at this point it's kind of in limbo. I don't want to say really say where they're at, but he said they've had the public meeting. There was some initial support, and they're not exactly sure right now if they can proceed. So we talked about how we could potentially join forces if we both came halfway. Okay. Okay, in Clearwater. Okay, and then the 5, I think, families in Prince George. A few in Kamloops. Okay, some in Smithers, I know. Yeah, so that's really good. We did talk to Jasper McBride because part of them coming here is the isolation factor of them being so far apart from other people that speak maybe Arabic or practice their religion. So I've also talked to the Immigrant Services Society in Prince George, and they're really willing to help us if we do sponsor a family to help them integrate by maybe once a month getting some of them together just to share and connect.
I just wanted to say that when the new school was built, there was an opportunity to expand the plan of the school, and in under 3 weeks, the community raised in the neighborhood of $250,000. So we have the capacity in our community, I think, to get behind something financially, and this has historically been a very generous and very innovative place to be. And so I think, if we all kind of rally around this cause, I don't think that the financial challenge is going to be a problem, but I hope that we can show that to be true.
Yeah, that's amazing. So what you're saying, Dan, is that you took everything for the school and there's nothing left. $250,000. Yeah. I guess on the next page is just the, more questions? Yeah, sure.
I just kind of wonder how are you going to get the ball rolling and to get, we have real momentum already starting here, but we want to raise this money as quickly as possible. So do you have plans and how you're going to keep this going to educate and get the rest of the community behind us?
Do you want to volunteer? No, hopefully.
Well, to me, this is a committee. It's a big, it's a huge job.
No, you're right. We have some momentum now.
Yeah.
Hopefully, some volunteers come forward that are interested. Staff at the Learning Center as well are dedicated to keeping this going. And we're hoping that by the end of the month, we have at least some contributions and an idea. And hopefully also on this form, some people maybe mark down that they want to volunteer and want to help fundraise and get the word out and essentially go around with these sheets so that more people are exposed to them. So.
Okay, so once they have the application, how long does it take for our family to come here?
It sounds kind of unsure. Some communities have waited for 3 months and then they're told a week before they arrive that they're coming. So I'm not really sure. I don't think I can answer that. I imagine within 4 to 5 months after the application, but I can't be sure. It also, I guess, depends from which area the refugee is coming from. We can go online and see the processing times, the average processing times, and they kind of depend on the different refugee camps. Some refugee camps are handling the applications faster than others. So I'm not really sure, though.
I just have a question about, do we have anybody in the community that would speak their language?
Yeah, I think there are maybe two people that do speak Arabic. And yeah. Yeah, it's a start, I guess. Yeah, that could be potentially the biggest challenge, though. And I hope also in the matching portion of it, if we outline kind of what our services are here, maybe they will match us with a refugee family that has slightly higher English skills. I'm not sure if that could be an option too.
I just wanted to respond to the timeline a bit. From what I understand, if you're going through the matching program, which is the only way to be matched with someone if you don't know of a refugee, you don't know John and you want to get John here. And that's the program that has thousands of sponsor groups waiting for a match. Once you put a hold on a profile that matches, we can bring in 4 people. So here's a list and there's 4 people. So you put a hold on that group of 4 people. Once you're matched and you get the full profile and agree to it, you have 30 days from when the profile was first released to get your completed application in. So that's the government's timeline. If it's not done within 30 days, that profile is returned to the pool. Then once the application is in, so if you get it in 2 days later or 29 days later, that will add or subtract from how long you're waiting for the family to get here. Mm-hmm. So if there's a family in a refugee camp that's been approved and you've been matched and your application is completed, they basically just need to get them on a flight. Mm-hmm. So then it just depends on travel. And they're traveling from through Toronto. So it's just a matter of the government flights. So the timeline does depend a bit on the community group and and how quickly they get the application done. If you have all your ducks in a row and all the forms completed and the money in the bank and you get matched and you get it in, you can speed it up. But we're in the middle of winter, so what's the rush?
Well, the family at the other end might say, hurry up.
Peter?
I'm coming to you with the microphone, Peter.
Okay, thank you. I had only one other concern, and that is about this community and the expectations of maybe bringing a Kurdish family here, a Christian family, a devout Shia, or other, or people that might be living in a more secular society in Syria. I would just hope that, since that might not be a choice or a determinant in the refugees we might sponsor here, that the refugee, the refugees or the refugee family might not feel any burden or expectation of religious compliance. Hopefully, they might be more secular if they are Muslim. But it just goes to the money that people are putting forward, and not with an expectation necessarily, because I believe Christians are only 10% of the population.
Yeah, I hope people donating don't have expectations like that. And I think on the other end of it, I'm pretty sure probably the refugees are aware that they're entering a country that is not predominantly Muslim, or so. Hopefully they're aware of that. I think they probably are. But that's going to be a tough transition either way.
I don't know if you are possibly going to answer my question in your next thing here, but when when we fill this out and make a pledge, so to speak, is there, and we're asking someone else to make a pledge, for example, is there some way that we can assure them that that if this all falls through, that they would get the money back, or can we?
No, that's a really good question, and that's something we were kind of debating to put on the sheet or not. Maybe we should have. That is a possibility, that we start this fundraising effort and then we don't raise enough to proceed. So at that point, that's where the contact information on the sheet becomes important. We're going to call people and we're going to ask them if we can just either return their contribution, or there's always the possibility to give it to another group in a nearby community if they want that to happen. But yeah, it's a good point. Okay. Well, we can just kind of quickly talk about the form. So the date at the top is the end of the month, January 31st. Hopefully, so there's a spot to say whether you're an individual or a community group or a business. So if you're part of a business and you can fill out more than one form if you're part of a community group and you're also just an individual. There's a spot here for the financial donation, like we were talking about, a one-time payment or something that you can afford to give every month. The in-kind donations, it's probably too early to say that you have a specific item in mind, but if you do, that's great. We don't want doubles and triples of one thing and nothing of another, so hopefully that's where we have some kind of community group that can take that on. There's quite a few spots under the volunteering, and this was just things that we kind of brainstormed. So there are other ways to volunteer too, and there's a spot at the end to say that if you come up with another idea. But some of them, create a fundraising event if you have an event in mind that works. If you just want to help with an event. This box here, assist family with part of their integration. So that refers to what we were talking about earlier, where volunteers could help the refugee family maybe deal with one specific thing that they have knowledge of. So I think the examples were the school system or healthcare. Conversation partners or English language tutors. I think Jeanette Lorenz was telling me about a friend of hers. She has a picture, I think, to share maybe. A friend of hers in Europe that was giving free lessons to refugees already, just at her kitchen table, giving English language lessons. So, and then these two are really important. A community group with charity status that can open a bank account, collect donations, and issue tax-deductible receipts. So we'll have to make sure that we don't do the direct giving or, yeah. But we'll check into that to make sure that's legitimate. And then also a community group that can provide space and coordinate collections of in-kind donations. The next two boxes are, I can provide temporary accommodation when the family first arrives until permanent accommodation can be found and or prepared. So sometimes the time frames are kind of weird from what I hear, that you wait for a month or two and then all of a sudden they arrive. So maybe it's hard to hold an apartment or a house for that long. So we might need temporary accommodation in the interim. The next one, I have suitable accommodation, rental accommodation that I can offer for subsidized rent or other. If you can think of any other way you could volunteer. And then the next ones, I consent to being recognized for my contribution. So we would probably really like to recognize people that contributed, but if you'd rather not be recognized, it's okay to stay private. And then the in-kind donations, it just lists some of the things that we would need to collect if we were going to proceed. And then some spots for ideas or questions. And that's the take-home form. Any questions about that? Yeah, Holly.
Do you have some way of, so we can see how much money we've raised? Because sometimes when you can see it, people would be more giving, let's try and get to 17 or whatever. That might be a really good way of itself of raising money.
Okay, so like a thermometer?
Yeah, something, just something.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah. Okay, well, the Learning Center's on Fifth Avenue. We have a glass window. Maybe we
As
could
long
make
as
a
we can get some
thermometer.
sort of agreement from the bylaw enforcement officer that we're not breaking any laws with the
Sign
sign
bylaw.
bylaws, we'll gladly put up a big thermometer and yeah, let the community see what we're raising, and it'll raise awareness as well. The question is our landlord fairly friendly? She's sitting here right now, so I would say yes, she's very friendly and very accommodating. She's saying put it on the roof, I think is what she just said.
But she's going to take a cut?
Do you want to pass that down to Jim, please?
How difficult would it be to form a charitable organization? You know, the Valemount Refugee, whatever.
Yeah. Okay, the question was how difficult would it be to start a charitable organization just for this purpose. I think I don't know. I think it's quite a lot of work to actually get that status, that charitable status, but I don't know. Does anyone else? Oh. Okay. And Dan, did you have something to add to that, or? Oh, sorry.
I would just like to share a moment with you. Our daughter in Edmonton has befriended 5 young ladies, Muslim ladies from Somalia, and it's a moving experience. So, and I'm sure we look around, most of us are from some other country, at least our parents or grandparents. And I think this is awesome.
They've been sponsored actually through a church in St. Albert, and she became involved through the a United Church, sort of a food cooperative, and it's just amazing. These girls range from about 12 till 20, and so when we go out, we always take them, like, her main goal is to be sort of take them to different places like the library, and they like to go to Starbucks. And the one little girl who's about 12, I swear she has about 10 sugar in her coffee, and we're like, how many sugar can you handle? But they're really sweet, and it's a really great experience. So. Yeah, thanks.
I just wondered if you explored doing a GoFundMe online fundraising instead, because then you wouldn't have to have the charitable thing. You could just kind of have that as a hold, and people can pay by credit card or by debit, and it's kind of there's a bit of a thing there with doing that, but it is an easy way to hold the money.
Yeah, I don't know if you can get a charitable tax receipt from it or not. I don't think so, and they take about 10%, I get, is what I've heard. McBride was considering that, and then they saw the 10%, and they just kind of shied away from that. But yeah, I guess, no, that makes it easy in some ways. With Interact or credit card, hopefully whatever kind of bank account we set up at the local bank, people could have those same payment options.
Jared, this is perhaps a little bit of a challenge to Conrad as well. Because there might be an association with the Christian school. I think it's an evangelical school in Smithers that held an open forum for the community, and specifically one of the presentations that was given, if it wasn't a movie itself, was called "Who Are the Syrians?" And it might be something that we might want to look into here in terms of the comfort level of the wider community of bringing and accepting people here who might be a little bit different.
Yeah, I heard about this, Peter. I didn't catch the name. What did you call it?
The name of the presentation given by the Christian school in Smithers was called "Who Are the Syrians?"
Okay, Jasper had something, I think, just last week. I don't know what they called it, but they basically asked immigrants in the community to come together along with anyone who wanted to attend, just so that they could tell their stories. So it was kind of just a story night of the immigrants that came. They told their experience. Some of them were refugees, some were just immigrants. So yeah, it's a neat idea.
And Jared, you already work with newcomers to Canada that have relocated to Valemount, and they're not all Christian-based. So did you want to maybe comment on that? That we're talking about one family, we're not talking about a whole community of Muslims moving in. I think we're already very multicultural and very multi-faith in our community. So I don't anticipate that there would be a problem or a fear or a concern or any of that with a family with a different religion that moves to our community. Mm-hmm. Did you want to comment on that as well? Maybe in your experience working with some of the families we look after?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the families that have settled here, I think, have found it pretty welcoming overall. Probably because we're such a small community, we do have a little bit less exposure, but that isn't always a bad thing, I don't think. Yeah, Maria?
I just wanted to add to this, actually to Terry's comment, and it fits to this now too. You asked me the other day how Jimmy's hike went up the Berg Lake, and one of the hikers told me later that she was the only Canadian in the hiking group of 17, I think.
Wow. Yeah, we are a country of immigrants. Yeah, Wendy?
It's not something we discussed during a heavy time, but Beth's question made me wonder if we should ask for volunteers for a committee to work on this. Is it too soon to do that?
No. Yeah, that's a good idea. So I'll just repeat the question. So Wendy was asking if maybe we should start a committee of volunteers that want to kind of keep this going and organize. Yeah, what are your thoughts on that? I think that's probably a good idea.
And maybe so that we don't put everybody on the spot right now, maybe give it a little bit of thought, and if you're interested, we can, you can certainly contact the Learning Center and we can start a list of names of people who are interested in joining a committee. And then from there we can maybe work on the terms of reference and come up with some sort of structure for it. Yeah,
definitely. Just put another tick box on your form and
put
say
it
that,
under
yeah,
the
I want
thoughts,
to be...
ideas, and questions, maybe.
Yeah. That's a good idea.
Thank you, Wendy.
Yeah, Kiba. I can just repeat the question, too.
I just had a question. I know there's been maybe some mention that some people might be uncomfortable with different faiths that are not normally in this valley. Is there any possibility that we could have maybe some Islamic representative to maybe educate some people who maybe don't understand maybe some of the differences? Because normally lack of knowledge is more scary than the actual thing that they're afraid of. So, I don't know if there are too many Muslims in this community, but maybe some groups from Prince George might want to come down and maybe talk about what their culture is and how similar or dissimilar it is, and maybe when you actually get to see the people, might relieve some concerns that some people have. Because I think you're right. I think it's unlikely that we're going to have secular or Christian refugees. Are most likely going to be Islamic of some form. So maybe a little education beforehand might help.
Yeah, that would be great. They would probably be preaching to the choir when they came here. Would be my one thought.
I was thinking maybe because there's some big communities in Prince George, I think. So maybe a representative might want to do a Q&A with the Valemount community, and
that'd be cool, actually. Yeah. Wow, that's a really good idea, actually.
Sorry, I missed that. What was that?
Riet said maybe that representative could visit the schools.
I like it.
Yeah, that is a really good idea. Yeah, please do. Yeah. Yeah, Maria said she knows someone in Prince George that might be interested in being that type of representative and coming here to share. Yeah.
I just want to add to these comments. I think trying to justify why we need to have a Muslim family in town, like it seems counterproductive. Like, we are a mixed community. I don't feel not welcome, and I think there are so many people, and I'm not Christian, and I think it's just a matter of how the newcomers are able to integrate in the community and meet people. And I think if we have the structure in place, a social support in place for them to do that, I don't think it should be a problem. And I don't think we should approach it from worrying about the few people who are already inclined to thinking that way. Like, they're going to think that way no matter if you get an educator from wherever and whatever. You know, like, it's not, I mean, it's good to do that in the schools like Riyadh suggests, but I think as a community we need to just, there is so much diversity already and people are welcoming, so why do we want to go from that, put our energy into something which I think is counterproductive, instead putting into something which is more productive. It's just my opinion.
Years ago, we did have a family in Valemount. They were Pakistanians and they were Muslims. And probably no one even realized that. Shirley and I did ESL English with them at the elementary school at the time. And they had lots of children. It was too cold here for them. And they came to school in their sandals, and they were afraid of, the mother was kind of the matriarch, and she was afraid that the little one might fall and get hurt on the hockey ice. So, yeah, they moved to Vernon, but they were, actually, the daughter and her husband had been here quite a few years before. Louise McLean worked with them a lot, and yeah, we enjoyed them.
Yeah, I think we are a pretty diverse community already. I think for such a small community, I know a lot of people are shocked to hear just how many people are here on temporary work visas or on working holidays or as permanent residents that came from somewhere else. So for a community of our size, I think we are pretty diverse already.
I just wanted to add to that, the fact that the Valemount Learning Centre has a contract to provide settlement assistance services suggests that we actually do have quite a few people from outside of Canada moving here that need that kind of service. Otherwise, the government wouldn't fund us to provide the services that Jared does. So we definitely, if that's any indication, we definitely are a very diverse community.
Great. Okay, well, there's a lot of coffee and desserts that need to be eaten, so.
Okay, so maybe now is probably when a lot of the great conversations are going to happen amongst ourselves and each other. We've got one more question here, and then afterwards, help yourself to coffee, tea, and desserts.
I just wanted to thank Bruce Wilkinson. It's his birthday today. He turned 75 today. So happy birthday, happy 75th. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, old Bruce. 75 today. Happy birthday to you.
Cool. Thanks so much, everyone. Yeah, please spread the word on these forums. Maybe in the coming week we will have a committee that can get together.